All right, we are go for launch.
Good evening and welcome to the May 24th, 2023 Henrietta Town Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Zafranik,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Here.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Belanca,
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We'll begin the meeting with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the preceding meetings?
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of preceding meetings from May 10th, 2023 and May 15th, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Zafranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. First up, we have special use permit application number 2023-018 and 019 for the Sikh Society of Rochester, 360 Commerce Drive. Application 18 is to operate a place of worship in an industrial zone. And application 19 is to allow truck parking on a designated lot. Please introduce yourself and your relationship to the project.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Ardietta of Vanguard Engineering, tonight representing the Sikh Society of Rochester. Hi, Coach. Just a little background on the applicant. The Sikh religion was founded in northern India in roughly the 15th century. It's a distinct religion and is separate from Hinduism and Islam. There have been Sikhs in the US for over 100 years. And there are roughly 700,000 Sikhs in the US now. It's, by the number of adherents, the fifth largest religion in the world. This congregation, they operate their place of worship at 360 Commerce Drive. And rather than church or synagogue, they use the term Gurdwara. They've been operating there since 2015. Their congregation includes doctors, veterinarians, and many business owners, 5 of which are actually within the town of Henrietta. So the site was previously owned by an individual named Tony Parada. He had commissioned a 22-stall truck parking lot site plan, which was approved by the town in 2008, in which he rented those spaces out. The building was constructed in 2011 and there was an addition in 2013. The building addition in 2013 also included a lot expansion for the parking. There was truck parking moved to the north and then to the east of the building. The Sikh Society of Rochester then purchased the lot in November of 2015. And they assumed with that purchase the truck rental agreement that Mr. Parada had with the truckers. So when they purchased that property to establish their place of worship, they did not know the ramifications that it had on the zoning. That a place of worship is not directly allowed within an industrial district. At the time that they established the facility, they did obtain tax exempt status. So they came forward and announced that they were a place of worship. It just wasn't caught, that it was not allowed within the district. So in 2022, they intended to expand their facility with a building addition. They contacted the town, and it was at that time that the town discovered what had happened with the use. And the town was then made aware also of the truck rental that had been going on for a period of time. So in an effort to rectify the issues and correct any issues that have arisen, the applicant is now coming before you to acquire those special use permits. This is all part of a site plan application that we've put forward for the building addition and to modify the site in a way that actually will reduce the impact on the surrounding wetlands and it actually reduces the impervious surface on the site.
Right. So, I mean, we were aware of the trucking, and again, there was the aforementioned special use permit, but as you noted, some of the stuff has shifted. So that's why so they're basically a house of worship is allowed in industrial zone with a special use permit, of course. And so, and then the second half of that is just updating the truck parking. Now, the previous owner, I shall say, had a tendency to expand first and ask permission later. So I'm glad to hear that
Agreed.
this group is doing it in the proper order. So, but and one of the things, the resolution basically just talks about, because of the proximity to the wetlands and the floodplains, and there's even a floodway through there at one part, that, again, any future expansions come in first.
Yeah, and
obviously.
as part of our due diligence, we mapped the floodway, the
Yeah.
floodplain, and we hired BME Associates to do wetland delineation, which they have done. And we are in the process of getting that permit with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay, great. But, and so one of the other things is, you're aware, we asked you to update the map just to delineate where the truck parking will be. In terms of the house of worship on the, really doesn't have much impact on in the way of the commercial district, obviously. And the trucking's been going on there for years, not to mention there's lots of sites and the Commerce Drive, Cook Drive, Transport Drive that do trucking. So, I, for one, don't see a big impact there. The big thing we wanted to see, though, is the separation of the truck parking from the separation of the house of worship. And one of the things I will note, I don't know all the tax exempt status ramifications. I do know when I was on the board of trustees at the Rochester Institute of Technology, they paid close attention, to those call them sub businesses that they had that potentially competed with other for-profits. So for instance, RIT operates the RIT Inn and Conference Center. Now, a portion of that building is dormitory and is considered tax exempt, but a portion of that building is essentially a hotel and conference center and is not tax exempt. And so they have to keep those tracked separately. And I just mentioned that because I wouldn't want them to find themselves in trouble with either the IRS or the New York State Department of Taxation. So they should pay attention to that, just so that they're not, again, hit somewhere down the road with an audit and fines and all that stuff. Because the trucking typically has to be tracked separately. Even if all the proceeds, again, I'm only speaking from my experience with RIT, but all the proceeds from that business were put into the educational institute, but they still had to track them separately, and the stuff there was not necessarily tax exempt. So
Understood.
any questions, comments from the board?
What are the trucks that you're parking there? Are those trucks that you own, or is it like you're letting people park their vehicles
They're rented to truckers. The truckers basically leave their trucks there overnight.
and then go home?
They bring their cars. leave the car in the adjacent space, take the trucks,
Okay.
use them, and then come back at the end of the
So they're
day.
just owned by individuals. So you're just
Correct.
basically renting out the space.
Correct.
Yeah, for a lot of, that's a common thing because in most residential roads, you can't take
Right.
a semi down, it would
I
destroy
just
the
didn't know
road.
if it
So,
was
yeah.
like maybe Amazon trucks or it was trucks that you owned
No.
or something.
These are all
But,
independent
Yeah,
truckers.
I've got a friend who does that, so I understand.
How many trucks are there on average?
On average, they say it's about half full, so it's roughly in the 12 area.
And I see that there's a playground that's very close to the trucking park part area. Do you have have that area fenced off?
With our site plan, we propose to relocate that playground actually to the south of the building addition that will be going in.
Okay. good.
So it'll be actually closer to the south property line. In addition, to physically separate the truck parking from the Gurdwaras parking, we are actually severing all the impervious surface between the two and placing in a bioretention facility for stormwater management. So
Right.
trucks won't be able to drive onto the Gurdwaras parking lot and vice versa. Otherwise, they'll drive into mud.
And I assume that retention that has the ability to settle if any oils or fuels or stuff coming off the parking lot to break down before. So from a stormwater standpoint.
That solid contaminants will be rested at the top of a bioretention facility. Liquid contaminants are going to basically spoil the soil, and that soil would have to then be removed if that were to happen.
Okay. I didn't know sometimes there's like those 4 bays that have the ability for again, obviously not a massive spill, but just the runoff that happens from the rain.
Yeah, the 4-bay works in a way that it stills the water, and if the water is sitting still, it doesn't have the energy to hold the contaminants,
Right.
so they precipitate out. Bioretention facility, actually, the soil itself is a filter that the
Gotcha.
water goes through.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the town board? Are there any questions from the public?
So this doesn't really impact my decision or anything, but I see that you have a peacock poop on there.
That is correct.
Right.
I mean, not me personally, but my
Right.
client does.
Is there a permit that's required for peacocks?
So during our due diligence, we looked into that and did not find an ordinance that
Anything related
required
to peacocks?
animal husbandry.
I guess one of the other questions is, are peacocks considered a,
Tree.
I'll call it a revered animal by the religion, in which case there would be an exemption anyway.
Okay.
I went to college with a friend who was of the Sikh faith, Rajit. I cannot remember his last name, but that was back in the 1980s. So, but familiar with it and familiar with some of the challenges in terms of what this was before the days of TSA. So I can imagine it's only more difficult now with.
There's a lot of misunderstanding that goes
Yeah,
on.
yeah, absolutely. Any other questions, comments? Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2023. Applications 18 and 19 for the Sikh Society of Rochester. Can I get a motion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Superintendent and fellow board members.
I'm sorry to interject. We do have a,
Online.
oh, I'm sorry. That's what you were doing. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Interject. I just want to make sure that we were doing the resolution that we prepared.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion for resolution number 12-192/2023 to issue a negative declaration and approve special use permits number 2023-018 and 2023-019 for the Sikh Society of Rochester.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations and thank you again for bringing the site up to code.
Thank you. Nice seeing you, Coach.
Next up, we have special use permit application number 2023-20. Genesee Valley Henrietta Moose Lodge, number 2290. 5375 West Henrietta Road to hold annual fundraising events between June and September 2023 with music, raffles, and sale of food, beer, and wine. Please introduce yourself and tell us about your events.
My name is Don Pettingill. I'm the president of the lodge. This is Michael Tubbs. He's the vice president of the lodge, and primarily we're here to get our annual, and I call it annual, every year we do it, permit to go and run our activities.
Sounds good. Does
I'd like-
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to start by thanking you for not sending Bob Laux to that this year.
Does anybody have any questions? Do we need them to describe? I assume it's very similar to previous years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Is there anybody who has any questions or comments? Anybody from the audience? Again, I don't know how many years this makes that we've been doing, because we changed it to where we allow you to do the whole summer's worth in one rather than the long list of permits. Yeah, so,
And we've never had a complaint ever.
no,
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
yep. All right. Then hearing no further comment, I'm going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-20 Genesee Valley Henrietta Moose Lodge 2290. Can I get a motion?
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I make a motion to approve special use permit application number 2023-020 for the Genesee Valley Henrietta Moose Lodge number 2290, located at 5375 West Henrietta Road, to hold annual fundraising events between June and September of 2023 with music, raffles, and sale of food, beer, and wine.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations and thank you. I look forward to attending some of the events and note that you guys do some great fundraisers. So,
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank
you.
you.
and thank you for all you do for the community. I will note that special use permit application number 2023-021 Starbucks 1100 Jefferson Road to construct and operate a restaurant with sit down and takeout service, outdoor seating, and a drive-through has been postponed by the applicant. However, if there is anyone here who wishes to speak with regards to this applicant, please let me know. Otherwise, we will postpone the hearing until they are ready. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Hearing none, then we will postpone the public hearing until resubmittal. Next up, we have special use permit application number 2023-012 and 013 for Lehigh Mixed Use by East River Henrietta LLC, formerly Commercial Street Partners LLC, for 84, 85, and 135 Lehigh Station Road to modify a previously approved mixed-use development comprised of commercial, industrial, multifamily residential, and civic space to now include attached single-family residential, which is application 12, and to construct a plus or minus 224 single-family attached dwellings, which is application 13. Please introduce yourself and tell us about the project.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor and members of the board. My name is Jess Sudol, civil engineer with Passero Associates. Also with me here this evening is Blago from Ryan Homes, who will be the home builder. We were here, I believe it was last month or maybe 2 months ago, to initially introduce the application. At that meeting, I spent a lot of time going through the various mixed use components of the project and how we arrived at the calculation, and as well as some of the history of the site which was originally contemplated as an industrial use. I'm happy to rehash that if the board would like, but for the sake of time, I'll just get to some of the updates. But one thing I just wanted to reiterate, this is a for sale product. You know, I know this board probably sees a lot of, rental units, but in this case, these are going to be for sale homes, which is, the Ryan Homes business model, which, we think provides a great opportunity to offer, basically homes at an affordable price. And everyone realizes how crazy the housing market now and how important that is. When we were last here, Mr. Supervisor, I believe you and other members of the board did ask us to consider a reduction in the density, which would potentially help us, increase the spacing and separation of the buildings. After working with Blago and also whatever this LLC is called, East River Henrietta LLC, they did agree to a reduction in the density. And essentially what that allowed us to do was get under the 10 units per acre that we previously presented at. And we were also able to increase the separation between the buildings by 25%. So by going from 236 down to 224, we were able to, accomplish those two things, which I think might be a little bit more palatable. It was to the planning board. We appeared there a couple of weeks ago. Because the density is over the 8 units per acre threshold in this particular overlay district, we were required to receive their recommendation for approval, which we did. So now we are back here again this evening. Our hope is that upon a positive result here, we would proceed, of course, to the planning board for site plan subdivision review with hopes of, starting construction, this year and getting in the ground and getting these homes to the market as soon as possible. With that, it's, kept it pretty short just because we talked a lot about it last month, but I'm happy to elaborate on any components of the project or anything else the board would like to discuss.
I'll just add, I appreciate the willingness to reduce the density. I do think the additional spacing helps. I think it fits better with the other stuff in the area. I also appreciate the extension of the road out to East River Road for the second entrance, and that you have the stub there in the event that the parcel to the east ever gets developed, so that that road can continue to the east. I think that will help alleviate some of the potential congestion at the Lehigh Station East River intersection, especially because both of those roads come down at a fairly steep angle to meet at that intersection. So the less traffic we can put through there, the better. Again, the whole project as a whole with the extension of the multimodal path, that's going to be huge because we're working on the construction of the rest of that multimodal path with the county when they redo East River Road as part of the East River Road corridor improvements. And to be able to get that all the way south to Lehigh Station Road is crucial in my opinion, because then it can pick up any of the many apartment complexes or in this case townhomes, and also houses that neighborhoods off of that road, to give them a safe path upon which to walk or ride their bikes or whatever. So which of course has been lacking on East River Road for quite some time. So very appreciative of all that. And with that, I'll open up, see if any of the other town board members have any questions or comments. Like I said, we've had this before, so. And I think they've addressed all of our comments and put all the accommodations in that we asked for. So. Absolutely. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Anybody online? Then hearing none, I am going to close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2023-012 and 013. We're just going to do it. We have those on the regular agenda. They're one of the first items on the regular agenda. So
Great, thank you.
we'll talk to them there. So that concludes our public hearings. Can I get my second resolution?
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-193, 2023. to issue an amended seeker negative declaration for the Lehigh mixed-use development at the corner of East River Road and Lehigh Station Road.
Seconded.
Any discussion? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-194, 2023 to approve special use permit number 2023-012 for an amended mixed-use special use permit for the Lehigh mixed-use development.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. I'll just make a comment. The updated number for the East River Road corridor seeker mitigation is in there. That will need to be paid before the building permits can be pulled. Okay, thank you. Congratulations, and look forward to you guys getting started.
You got one more.
I will note again, if as many as, or, obviously check the market, but we have heard from the town board that there is interest in seniors with first floor apartments or first floor bedrooms in the townhomes. So I know you had changed some, but I just want to reiterate that because we've heard similar comments, or at least I have over the last 2 weeks. So. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
For the minutes, Becky Blago said that absolutely we will take that into consideration and include that in their plans. So. Oh, I didn't realize we did the seeker separately.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Hello, board members. I have resolution 12-195, 2023. Read the right one.
194.
No, I'm reading the
Oh, we already-
195.
You did.
To approve special use permit permit number 2023-13 for the Lehigh mixed use development submitted by East River Henrietta LLC to allow the construction of for sale townhomes.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Thanks, Rick. I missed that because normally the seeker is rolled into one of the resolutions, so I didn't notice there were 3. Next resolution.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 12-196, 2023 to authorize and or ratify the following agreements executed between May 8th, 2023 and May 22nd, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Anything from the public? It's our it appears our camera has stopped. It's not moving though.
Rose.
So typically, Craig, you have to disconnect and reconnect if you. Yeah, no, I mean, it's not even the cable, it's the software. It's whatever, yeah, it's that software that does the. We're gonna pause while we fix our camera for those on online. Still not seeing any motion.
No, it's not.
Andrew is on the way.
Okay. Nope. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. Here to the rescue. Where's your Superman cape?
I was trying to decide if we should say Batman or Superman. Guess there's quite a contest between those two, who likes Batman and who likes Superman.
That's the USB connect disconnect. We were unnaturally still, Becky.
Eerily so.
We're still not moving.
Nope, it's
I
going.
see you.
Craig's moving. Yep.
It's working out.
Yep. All right. It's going. Becky?
Hi, I was gonna say, I think I hear Andrew talking to me. Hey,
Yep.
Andrew.
Can you see the camera?
Yeah, I can see you folks really good, but we lost the interpreter.
Yeah, but it's working. Just gotta get
It's
the
like the
interpretation.
camera's up.
We need one of those little buzzers that comes across and says, we are experiencing technical
That's right.
difficulties.
Hey, Craig, did you like the way the Yankees came back last night? Bottom of the ninth. Yeah. I think they're in third now. Yeah. We'll have to have a bet when they play Boston. I believe it.
Yay. How is, are we out streaming to the web? Got a little bit of an echo. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Becky, are we streaming out? Can you tell if?
We are back on Zoom and YouTube. We're looking good.
Okay, great. Okay.
Any echo here?
No, it was just he had to mute the camera. Nope. Okay, where did we leave off?
We had a motion in a second, but we did not yet call the roll because we were distracted by Craig crawling around in the room.
So this was for the bills payable?
No.
Oh,
Approve
approve ratify agreements. Okay. Okay, so, and had I seconded? Can you remember?
Rick seconded it.
seconded.
What number are we on? It's one
One
missing.
96.
Oh, okay, I'd already scrolled forward. I went the wrong way. Okay, found it. Okay. Any questions, comments? Other than thank you, Andrew, for fixing the cameras. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board members, I have resolution number 12-197, 2023. To authorize bills payable and any associated contracts or agreements for today, May 24th, 2023.
Seconded.
Any discussion? I know a big chunk of for this amount, we started the payments on the court construction. Is that correct, Linda?
Yes, I did.
Oh, Rick can answer that. Yes. Okay, any further questions, comments? Anything from the public? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye. Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-198, 2023. To declare intent to be lead agency for seeker review of the proposed plus or minus 70-unit multifamily senior housing known as West Sunset Senior Apartments located on the east side of West Henrietta Road.
Second. Any questions, comments?
Is this a new project? I don't,
It is a new project. So originally it was going to be 5 single-family homes. But they decided to switch that to be senior apartments because of the need for there was a greater need for senior apartments than 5 new large acreage homes.
okay. Yeah, there's no denying that we do need senior apartments. I just I do wonder sometimes if there is a boomer bubble and you know, what will happen if that, once we get past the boomer generation.
And that's distinctly possible, although with the constantly increasing lifespans,
Mhm.
other than there was a slight dip due to COVID. But with I think that the need for senior housing, whereas it might not grow like it's growing right now, I don't think it will decline a whole lot.
Decline.
No, we're an aging population. We're living longer. These are not affordables, though. This is senior housing. I mean,
Just
this is
senior
not-
housing,
yeah.
to my knowledge, there's nothing involved in this that,
Okay,
I mean, so essentially it's market rate senior housing.
Yeah. Affordable senior housing would be even preferable, but I understand it's
Right.
it's a business decision.
We do have one of those going in at the mall that if you haven't
Absolutely.
been by there lately, they're
They're
moving
going up
along pretty
quickly.
quick, yeah. So, any further discussions? Any questions or comments from the public? Then hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 12-199, 2023 to award the winning response for the sale of the town of Henrietta DPW cell tower.
Second.
Any questions, comments for those curious? The winning bid was $1.35 million and $100. So $1,350,100. We suspect the 100 is in case somebody else bid 1.35 million, they would win. So any questions, comments from the public? Then hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 12-200, 2023 to approve the conveyance of open space from Howlett Acres subdivision, section 2, and authorizing the signing and acceptance of associated conservation easement.
Second.
Any discussion? Any comments from the public?
This is related to the Parkland exchange.
So this is not necessarily parkland, it's more open space. It's along, like, there's a buffer in between the homes and the railroad. It is not a green belt. It's open space, so it will stay wild.
Okay.
The parkland is was in section 1 and that was donated. There's probably a small portion of the land along the road as well to create a buffer to the highway. That's a sidewalks that connects sections 2 and 3 to the park in section 1. Did I get that all correct, Chris? Any further questions, comments? Then hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-2001, 2023 to approve the conveyance of open space for Howlett Acres subdivision in section 3 and authorizing the signing and acceptance of associated conservation easement.
Seconded.
Any discussion? So again, there were a total of the 3 phases. Phase 1 was already, or section 1 was already dedicated. We're just dedicating the final 2 sections. Hearing and seeing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-202, 2023 to authorize the purchase of a garage door for the Buildings and Grounds Maintenance Department.
Seconded.
Any discussion? This is garage door on the existing building. That area sees a lot of wash, salt, other stuff. So the fact that the door lasted 23 years before corrosion got the better of it was pretty good. Anything else? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-203, 2023 to authorize the purchase of a new pickup truck for the Drainage Department.
Seconded. Any discussion?
Is that available?
I assume so, but I don't know that for certain.
Okay.
We went out to bid on a mini bid. And they were the lowest bidder. We then submit our purchase orders and then Chevy decides how many vehicles they will be producing.
Gotcha. So we don't know yet is
Okay.
the result of that. Any further questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 12-204, 2023 to authorize the purchase of 2 2024 3/4 ton pickup trucks for the Buildings and Grounds Department, subject to permissive referendum.
Second.
So it's subject to permissive referendum because this is a type reserve fund. We created this to allow us to purchase vehicles, and especially like these vehicles, we do not expect to have come in until next year. But since we haven't put together next year's budget, we can't spend next year's budget dollars. They're not in this year's budget, but we wanted to get the order in now so that hopefully we'll have them in time for next year. So the newly created Equipment Capital Reserve Fund works perfect for that. And then basically what we can do is decide how much, if any, we want to essentially reimburse the Capital Reserve Fund next year for those vehicles. So any questions, comments?
Just to say that given the supply chain, that's a great move on your part.
I can't take credit for it. It was,
Hmm.
I believe it was Mike Catalano, our Commissioner of Public Works, who,
It's a team.
yep. Any further questions, comments? Anything from the public? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 12-205, 2023. Whereas Daryl Dear Cubit has donated $30 to the Henrietta Public Library for the acquisition of DVDs. And whereas a check in the amount of $30 was received by the library director, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Daryl Dear Cubit for their generosity.
Second.
Discussion?
Just want to thank Daryl for his continued donation for DVDs. I know as someone who was a blessed holdout for streaming services, it was always great to be able to go to the library and access inexpensive movies and things like that.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly from Monday's the discussion at the staff meeting, that Daryl is a regular donator to the library.
Yeah.
Any further comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-2006, 2023. Whereas Genesee Valley Council of the Arts has granted $1,650 to the Henrietta Public Library for the Tiny Art Show event. And whereas a check in the amount of $1,650 was received by the library director, therefore be resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Genesee Valley Council on the Arts for their generosity.
Seconded.
Discussion? So again, if my recollection from the staff meeting is accurate, they're going to use these funds to create an area where they can hang and display art. If I remember correctly, if you're heading towards the children's library, it's off to the right of the staircase. So they had an area similar that's worked really well. So they want to add this so that they can throughout the year have display art from residents and students and stuff like that. So
I love that. I love that idea, and I love seeing art displayed in the public spaces, particularly libraries. So I appreciate the library and the library director for working to get this for our library here.
any further questions, comments? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-207, 2023. Whereas Henrietta Public Library Friends and Foundation Incorporated has donated $4,000 to the Henrietta Public Library for summer 2023 programming and circulating tote bags. And whereas a check in the amount of $4,000 was received by the library director, therefore be it resolved that the Henrietta Town Board acknowledges this donation and thanks Henrietta Public Library Friends and Foundation Incorporated for their generosity.
Seconded.
Discussion?
I just want to, put a huge kudos out to the Henrietta Public Library Friends and Foundation. At the beginning of the year, the library gives them a kind of their wish list, well, not really, kinds of puts in what they like. And the Friends of the foundation work hard to get the money so that they can achieve what they want. And I think it's just amazing how hard they work to get it. Their most recent used book sales, they got over $1,400 just in used books, and they work that to sell it. So I just think it's really it's a volunteer position and they do an amazing job.
Agreed. Any further comments? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That's it.
Oh.
Yep.
You have it, it has you reading it.
Just flip it.
Oh, no, it has the resolution you gave me.
On the back.
No, we're not there yet.
Sorry, we're still going.
Yep.
Right there. Hello. Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-208, 2023 to make budget adjustments per the 2023 adopted budget based on New York State CHIPS, et cetera, allocation notifications.
Second. So there are a number of highway programs, CHIPS being the largest one, but also touring and severe weather and a whole bunch of others. Those numbers come in at this time. We budget for them based off of previous years. We try to stay on the conservative side. And lately they've been coming in higher than budgeted, which is great. We always prefer to adjust the budget up as opposed to down. So that's what this one's for. Any questions, comments? Anything from the public? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 12-209, 2023 to hire personnel and make the attached change.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 12-210, 2023 to authorize the advertisement of bids for the purchase of used golf course mowing and maintenance equipment.
Second.
So as anyone who's been following town board actions lately knows, we've been in the process of acquiring the Riverton Golf Course Clubhouse, as well as taking over operation of the golf course from the company that used to operate the golf course. We've hit a legal snag in terms of the acquisition of the clubhouse. Right now they're focusing on just the equipment that we need to maintain the golf course. So right now the golf course is not open. But if you don't want to have to start from scratch, you need to do a bunch of maintenance in terms of especially greens mowing, tees mowing, fairway. We're also using the opportunity, since we don't have golfers out there, to look at doing improvements such as roughly half of the sand traps were fixed in a previous year. So we would working towards the goal of fixing the other half and even improving the ones that were fixed previously, because they could have been done better. And then we're also looking at, we've been making improvements to the pump house in the irrigation system. So we'll be looking at that. But this one is specifically for a couple pieces of mowing equipment that were going to be part of the sale of the clubhouse. But we need them now in order to maintain the golf course. So we're going to go out to bid, and if the current current owner of the clubhouse, if his equipment is the lowest, we'll buy those. If someone else is lower, we'll buy those. So it's just the pieces of equipment we need to maintain the golf course. Questions, comments? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I just had a person in the virtual audience raise their hand. I'm going to continue on. Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow town board
Did-
members, I have
Did you want to
resolution-
speak to the person with their hand raised?
Sure.
I'm
Let's see.
sorry.
Let's see
I'm
what.
sorry, I assume it's about, it just went up once we started calling the roll. I have Kevin Yost here with a hand raised.
Yes, I had a question about the golf course. It sounds like the town's in the process of acquiring the clubhouse from the Domino family and as well as the operation of the golf course itself once it reopens from the Domino family.
Correct. If we acquire the clubhouse, the Domino family will no longer be involved in the operation of the golf course.
Yes, but they own the parking lot as well.
That's the clubhouse parcel, yes.
Okay, it's all one and the same.
Yep.
And I'd hope that maybe including the old paper park, Riverton Park, paper park, parking name only, 23-acre peninsula off the side, and then more land off to the other side to the east, maybe could make it into 18-hole golf course.
Yeah, unfortunately, the portion of Riverton that had been originally designed to be actually was originally going to be the front nine, and these current 9 holes would become the back 9. That was sold by a previous town board, so there is no room to expand to 18 holes.
Okay, and yes, we're just stuck with the parking name only as wildlife, the 23-acre peninsula to the west.
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but
River Bend Park, it's a parking name only nowadays. It's the peninsula where the river makes a bend up the west end of the golf course.
so that is currently 18-hole disc golf course. You could not fit 9 holes in there. No.
Okay, thank
you. Fit 2.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Rick.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-2011/2023 to award the winning bid for greens mower portion of the summer 2023 tractor, backhoe, and mower bid to Joseph C. Domino Incorporated.
Seconded.
So again, we'd put a bid out last meeting for greens mower because that's one of the pieces we needed. Now, at the time, it also included the tractor and backhoe combination because that was going to be part of the purchase agreement. Because the purchase agreement is stalled, we are not going to act on the tractor backhoe at this time. We are only going to act on the mower because, again, we don't need the tractor and backhoe right now. From a maintenance standpoint, we wouldn't potentially need it if we are operating the golf course. But right now we're only going to move forward with the greens mowers.
Mr. Supervisor, does this include 2 mowers or is it just the 2007 model?
Right. So the bid is the 2007 model. But I contacted Mr. Domino, and there was also a 1994 model that wasn't operating, and when we were still in the operating agreement before the legal snag came across, we had kind of cobbled the two together. So we really need the parts from the 1994. He agreed to sell those to us for $100. So they're not part of the bid itself, but we will be acquiring both of them. So basically $4,000 from the bid and the $100 for essentially what are parts.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution number 12-212-2023 to issue a seeker negative declaration and authorize an intermunicipal agreement for the transfer of land to create a new Monroe County Park.
Seconded.
Discussion. So as you saw, there's I wrote the initial draft of the intermunicipal agreement. Town attorney has made a number of comments and suggested modifications to it. None of which changed, I'll put it this way, none of which really changed the business terms. It's more of the legal aspects. We still don't have the comments back from the Monroe County attorney, but the idea is that we would approve the IMA as it is. If the county comes back with a material change to the IMA, we would have to reapprove. But it's subject, the approval is subject to both town and county attorney approvals.
So, this resolution is a two-part resolution where we're issuing a negative declaration, secret declaration, and also authorizing you to sign the IMA.
Correct. The seeker, in other words, basically seeker is associated with an action. The action is that the creation of the IMA to start the process of the transfer of the land. So that's basically why they're together. Any other questions on that? I'm sure there's people out in the audience waiting to talk.
Yeah, and just one more thing is if there's significant changes, this IMA will be coming back before the board.
That is correct. I won't even say it doesn't have to be significant. It has to be material. So my point is, if it's what I'll call legalese, right? If it's framed a bit different, that doesn't need to come back. But if it changes the terms of the IMA, then that would need to come back.
Okay.
I'll also note that obviously it's just to start the transfer process. Any final sales, real estate sales agreement and or deed restrictions, anything like that would have to come back in front of the town board.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? We'll open it to the public.
Marvin Kneck, 96 Chatwood Lane. I want to thank you, Steve, for sending me a copy via email of that IMA, the draft one. But one of the things I noticed in there, in addition to the shelter or the pavilion, the parking place spots and stuff like that, which were in the original agreement, I understand that. But in there, this is the first time I've seen it, is charcoal grills. And my concern is that depending on where you put those grills in the pavilion, the nearest, if there's were to be a fire from carelessness or people smoking, because that area that's around that shelter is going to stay as a meadow from the way it looks like it's worded. There's the risk for our concern on the street is that there's risk for fire there. Is there any thought to putting a fire hydrant closer to that shelter or to that area? Because right now, depending on where you put that shelter, you're looking at, a good couple blocks to the nearest fire hydrant up on Chatwood Lane. It's more of a safety concern that we're worried about.
Yeah, so right now, I believe it's designed to be a lateral to the shelter. I don't know what the actual diameter of that 2-inch. So there would be, not a full fire hydrant there, but there would be some ability to suppress. In terms of the again, basically, that was just trying to list the stuff that was contemplated when we were talking about this originally. To kind of set the groundwork for the county who's going to be doing a master planning process. But this is a great thing to bring up in that master planning process. In terms of, I don't typically where we see is there is whether it's stone dust or paved, there's some area around
Right.
any kind of grill, and they're mounted typically and, set either driven into the ground or set in concrete so that they're not mobile.
Right.
But to specifically address the fire risk in terms of no smoking, I don't know about the county. The town is a non-smoking facility. Granted, you can never stop that, but I also can't stop somebody from driving by your yard and flicking their lit cigarette out into their yard either. So, but like I said, this is absolutely something that I think would be great to bring up during the master planning process to make sure they account for that. As you see in the IMA, we're in the county's agreed to it, that basically there will be the town board, or not town board, town personnel. It could include, well, up to 2 board members, or else we have to call a public hearing every time we meet. And local residents, and then they agree to do an additional one specifically, for all the residents at Chatwood and or Woodridge Crossing, I think is to the west. There's a couple other homes besides those on Chatwood that are in the immediate vicinity. So they're going to do, in addition, they're going to have a session for master planning, specifically including the adjacent properties.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. I'm John O'Connor. I'm a resident on Chatwood as well. I've been in Henrietta since 1995, so I'm pretty familiar with the area and what we're doing. Just a couple of concerns as a relatively new homeowner on that street, and you answered some of the questions I had already. But as we move forward and you talk about the ability to get involved with the planning process, that's what we're really, I think, most concerned with, is to have some input. Some of the things that, as I looked at the IMA, that came to my mind are, there is, and I know this came up in a previous meeting, a concern with, a county park opens the aperture a little bit. And there could conceivably be more traffic in that area. And my understanding was it was going to be a traffic study that would help us determine what the impact of that might be. I think everybody would understand that we have that concern. It's a dead end cul-de-sac street, and it could be significant traffic. Access down to the pavilion, a concern that we have, and I've talked to several of the neighbors, is there's 20 parking spots in the plan, but there's also a very long street. And, how do we control those types of things? Access, parking. And we went and looked at Breeze Park as an example. My wife and I, we took a look at that. It's a different type of park. It doesn't have a pavilion or anything like that, but we see gates. I don't know if those gates are actually opened and closed daily or not. That would be a concern if the county is going to do the same thing.
So one of the things we have in the IMA is the ability for the town to offer services, for lack of a better way to put it. And so if the county doesn't have the ability to come and open the close, and they may be able to do that through the Monroe County Sheriffs or some other, but one of the things that we can do is that we would say, okay, when we're doing our rounds of our parks, we would go and lock those gates too.
Okay.
I will note that Breeze Park does have plans for a restroom and a pavilion. They just haven't been constructed yet. But
Okay. So it'd be a similar.
it'd be very similar to that. Yep. And that's kind of the model we're looking at, because again, it's a more passive park. There aren't sports fields there. There aren't rentable cabins. That one also comes in right through a residential neighborhood. So again, it's very similar in that regards. Is kind of what we're looking at.
When you say rentable cabin, it did mention rentable pavilion.
The pavilion, in theory, that they'd be able to rent. One of the things that the county does do is if they do set limits on that. I will note that, whatever that limit, and this is one of the areas that our town attorney did strengthen, is that seeker, the traffic study and seeker analysis for any amenities going in. So, you know, when we were first talking about it, again, we contemplated these things, but one of the things we said is it's based off of our belief that these, again, fit in this area. But if a traffic study shows otherwise, so for instance, when you look at the square footage they put on that pavilion in the plans, I think it's too large. That's a big pavilion. I suspect it's going to be shrunk down more to a size like you see at some of these up in Durand, where I think it's a maximum. I don't want to say the numbers because I don't remember them off the top of my head. But when I was going around and looking at other pavilions, or there's one in Mendon Ponds. I'm trying to remember what it was called, but there's a couple of the smaller pavilions there. That's the size that I personally was contemplating. But one of the things that, again, our town attorney strengthened in there is that anything would have to go in, would have to have that traffic impact study. And if it was determined that the impact was going to be too great on the neighborhood, then they would have to dial back the amenities until it was under that threshold.
Okay.
What that exact threshold is, I couldn't tell you. I'm not a traffic expert. But like I said, that is something we've considered because we understand the concern. And again, we do the same thing when we look at what we're talking about putting in at Breeze Park, because those are, again, to me, very similar in that they come in through a residential neighborhood.
Right. Okay. My only other point was lighting. I'm sure there's going to be some level of lighting for security down there. I'm not sure what that's going to look like, and I would imagine that would impact some homes on that street more than others, depending on location. So that's a concern, is what type and what level of lighting would be down there. And
Yeah, I would not expect much in the way of lighting. Obviously in the pavilion itself, I'd imagine there would be some, but I'm not even 100% certain of that. Again, that would come out in the master plan. I would not expect there to be streetlights, for instance. Typically, anywhere there's an intersection, there is a light over the intersection. But I don't know if that always applies for essentially, it's not exactly a driveway, but essentially we'll call it a public driveway. But again, that would be part of the master planning process. I don't know, Ron, does Chatwood, did that look at, I know some neighborhoods have streetlights. Does Chatwood no streetlights? Okay. So I assume that, but there's probably a Cobra Head where Chatwood meets Ward Hill. Yeah. Okay. So like I said, whether there would be needed an additional one where the park entrance comes in, I don't know. The other option they might do is look at, do they do a low intensity light just to show where the sign is? Although this very well might be a dusk to dawn. No, other way around, dawn to dusk
yeah.
park, so that it's not open at night, in which case you wouldn't need lighting.
Okay. And my final question would be, how will we as residents find out when this planning committee that we can participate in? So we can.
So one of the things I will do, again, I've mailed a bunch out, and specifically anybody who had previously contacted. I will do the same thing and go out and encourage other people to make contact. But if you want to ensure, send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org. We'll have a list. And as this process starts, I will email blast out to that list. The other thing is there is a e-notify where for legal notices and hearings, if you sign up for that list, we would blast out to that list as well. So
great.
Mr. Supervisor, if you could include the board on that as well, because
absolutely.
often when it's a neighborhood project, we don't get notified until kind of after the fact.
Okay, so one of the things I would suggest is if you haven't, sign up for that
No,
e-notify.
we get the e-notify,
okay.
but yeah, again, if it's a neighborhood project, it
Gotcha.
doesn't go out through e-notify, so
It depends on the project. but yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So this one, I don't remember if I copied you on when I sent to it, but the same thing I sent to the town board, I also sent to the residents.
Okay.
So,
It might be wise for you when they meet with the residents that are nearby to suggest that the county put no parking signs on the access road. And with that signage, the Monroe County Sheriff might be able to take some more action if they ignore it and just start lining up on the access road.
Is that request to the town or is that to the county at that point?
That ultimately it would be to the county. But now, one of the things that, we would look to do is when we put those gates up, like what we've done for areas where we collect erratic boulders that, basically glacial erratics and other boulders. And one of the things that we do is when we put those gates up, we will strategically place with enough gap for people to get through, but that way people don't just drive around the gates. So.
Great. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Coming up.
Board, thank you. Ron Hinkle, Pinnacle Homes, 4 Chatwood Lane. I want to make it, I want to be clear. There will be, when you do the IMA, and you send that to the county, even if they accept everything you do there, they still have to go through the process of the master planning process, correct?
Correct. In fact, the IMA essentially obligates them to that.
Okay.
They've offered to, they do it anyways. They're the ones who suggested that. But one of the things, because in the original approval for the town, we had committed that we were going to include area residents. The IMA obligates them to including area residents and town personnel in the master planning process. So yes, they will have to go through the master planning process. And in addition, when they put out a plan, before they can actually implement the plan, it will need to go through seeker.
Okay, that's the only question I have.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Is there any, coming up?
Thank you. Thank you, Town Board. My name is Brian O'Hare. I'm from Henrietta, and I was here at the end of March for that town meeting there, and at the time presented summary findings from New York Citizens Audit, the statewide nonprofit group that's done extensive research into the election records.
Oh, hold on. Right now, this is just about this resolution. So unless you have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Yep.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Okay.
Anything online? And hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. And last, we have a last minute, I guess, last 15-minute addition to the agenda. We just prior to the meeting, we received notification from Beam Mac Sales and Service that the estimate that they had given us for a truck repair was insufficient. So therefore, fellow board members, I have resolution 12-213, 2023 to increase the not to exceed amount for the vehicle repairs for a 10-wheel truck needed by the highway department.
Seconded.
So again, we had previously approved a not to exceed number of $8,500. The repairs are over $10,000. I'm proposing a new not to exceed cost of $12,000. Hopefully they will not exceed that. This particular truck has had a lot of issues. I'm hoping this is the last of it. I will say I am not pleased with, seems like this has been happening a bunch with Conway Beam Max Sales and Service, where they give us an estimate and then they come back and it's over that estimate. Now maybe it's just that we've had a run of bad luck with additional problems in the vehicle, but I will say, like I said, I find it vexing, shall I say. Other comments, questions? So again, we apologize for the last minute, but it made more sense to me to add this as a last minute resolution than to call a special meeting of the town board.
Yeah.
Then hearing and seeing no further comments, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. And I will also note that originally we had an approved deny resolution for East Henrietta Apartments, the special use permit application 2022-051. That has been tabled by AR Building. We basically told them that in our review of it, that the density was too high. And so they are looking to see if they can figure out some way to bring down the density or the possibility of incentive zoning to get the additional allowed density. So I will be, they just raised that question today, I think it was. So I am going to be reaching out to the adjacent properties to see if there's any incentive zoning that they would be interested in, because as a general rule, the way Henrietta does its incentive zoning is we try to keep those community benefits local to the project. Doesn't make sense to us to say, oh yeah, we'll allow a higher density in here that affects these people in the immediate area and do the community benefit way on the other side of town. So just going back to the Forest View, you know, that park was part of that community benefit, as was the preservation of farmland immediately adjacent and preservation of other lands immediately adjacent. You know, we try to keep, like I said, the community benefits in the area. So right now that's tabled. I will say, based off of discussions at Monday's workshop meeting, if they can't find a way to decrease their density, I expect it to be denied. In fact, we had written a denied resolution and they basically tabled, saying they want to have time to take a look to see if they can get the density down. So that's it. If anyone was here to give comment on that particular application and would like to do so, you're free to speak now. We'll listen to that. But like I said, as of right now, that is tabled. Okay. That concludes our resolution. Can I get, not can I get, are there any, well, I know there's at least one additional discussion item or comments from the public. Now you can come up. Yep.
All right, thanks. Take two. Yeah, so Brian O'Hare, Henrietta resident, was here at the end of March for the town board meeting, and as a member of the New York Citizens Audit, presented a summary of the deficits report that the New York Citizens Audit created from taking an extensive look at the publicly available records out there, looking at the New York State voter database and all the problems that were found therein, and which were disturbing, you know, to us, the findings. And although they really don't, we haven't pointed a finger at anyone in Henrietta or anything, and we don't know of any races that were impacted locally for local town Henrietta races. We do notice that our vote was severely marginalized, which poses a very real threat for the future. And it also may have impacted races across the state. So it's a very significant finding that we're still pursuing, and we're not going to let go of. So tonight, what I'd like to do is there's 6 of us Henrietta residents here. We'd like to read, and I'm not sure, I emailed the resolution to the supervisor. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to read it or not, but tonight there's 6 of us that would like to read the body of the resolution into the record so that the residents of Henrietta can know what's in it and what we're asking you board members to do for us. So there's 6 of us that want to do that, read that into the record. The 2 points before we do that, though, I'd like to make out. One is that we did do an effort within Henrietta. We went door to door, and we have a petition that we have for redress of grievances. And we went to Henrietta residents, and we got 150 signatures out of that. People that are saying, yes, we want Henrietta to do something about it. We want the board to sign this resolution here. We want something to happen. We didn't go to that many neighborhoods, really. I mean, the time is ticking, and we only have so much time. But I will say, unofficially, I have to take my word for it, that I would say 3/4 of the people I talked to signed the petition. There was a lot of people thanked us for the effort because we're trying to do something. We're trying to think out of the box, do something, you know, maybe we're not comfortable doing, but, you know, do something just to move the ball forward, let people be aware of the problem and then see what we can't do collectively on our part to go out and have people sign petitions and hopefully on your part to sign this town resolution. So people were thankful for that effort. Some people were afraid to sign the petition. I wasn't aware at the time that we redact the names on the petition, so it's not something they should have been afraid of, but some people were afraid of that. Some other people I talked to were very, they've pretty much given up hope on the election system in New York. And so that's really sad. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. And that's why we're hoping why you'll consider signing this resolution and putting your name to that. And in the resolution, we're really not asking for any action other than for you just to make a stand as our representatives, the way we're trying to make a stand in our own way. So the second point I'd like to make is that we do have one of our NYCA members here today. If you have any further questions about the data, particularly, I know we presented a copy of the data to you, Supervisor, but it's probably pretty hard to load it in the system and work with it. But he's someone that does work with the data. He's seen some of the clear, you know, invalid records in the system, so he can attest to that if you would like to ask him any questions. So if that's it, if you don't have any questions, I'd like to start to read the resolution.
If
Yeah.
you could make it expedient, shall we say, because
Yeah.
we've used a lot of.
It's three-quarter pages, and
Let's get
that's
started.
yeah.
Don't need
Yeah.
any more expository.
Okay. Now, is anyone keeping records? Do they need to know the names? Or can we have to say the names first before we speak it, or can the other readers just get up and speak?
And any speaker needs to say who they are for the record, and it's recorded, so they do the minutes, transcription minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I had a list of their names, but okay. All right. Resolution for an audit of the New York State 2022 general election. Whereas it is recognized civil right in the United States for every citizen to have free and fair elections. Quote, and the right of suffrage can be denied by debasement or dilution of the weight of a citizen's vote just as effectively as by wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. End quote. Reynolds versus Sims, 377 U.S. 533, 1964. Whereas it is the affirmative duty of our election officials to comply with all federal and state laws governing administration and procedure of our elections, thereby guaranteeing our elections are accurate and free of distortion or manipulation. Whereas our constitutional system of representative government only works when the worth of honest ballots is not diluted by invalid ballots procured by corruption, and assuring accuracy can only be achieved through the operational integrity of our elections, as defined by those laws governing the following 5 processes. 1, rigorous verification of voter identity. 2, proven ballot security and an intact chain of custody. 3, voting systems certified to be secure from operational, physical, and cyber threats. 4, meets all FSMA and state operational and risk assessment requirements. 5, meets auditability and traceability requirements and operational policy.
Hi, Supervisor and board members. My name is Eric Holt. I've been a resident of Henrietta since 1970. Whereas an open source audit of the New York State 2020 general election conducted by New York Citizens Audit has uncovered evidence of massive inaccuracies that violate both federal and state laws
including 2,427,827 New York State voter ID numbers attached to 1,170,790 registrants. 396,000 ineligible votes cast statewide. 338,356 more votes cast than voters who voted. 987,490 voters who registered on January 1st from 1900 to 2021. 1.9 million registrations in the state voter rolls missing from county rolls. 625,359 more registrations than voting age citizens in 6 counties alone. 195,271 votes cast in New York City that went missing in the New York State voter database. 1 million plus felony violations of New York State election law. 95 state and federal legislative races impacted by 740,396 ineligible votes. Abandoned ballots and ballot payment schemes. Certification as defined by law was provably fraudulent and illegal. Thank you.
Richard Marsh, Grangerford Heights, Henrietta, New York. Whereas these findings trample accuracy requirements of voting systems for a federal election, wherein the system shall achieve a target error rate of no more than 1 in 10 million ballot positions. For a voting system, accuracy is defined as the ability of the system to capture, record, store, consolidate, and report the specific selections and absence of selections made by the voter for each ballot position without error. Whereas it must be known factually and provably that the intent of the voters is accurately represented by the election results before the certification can be lawfully conducted. Certification of an election that varies from the law is an abridgment of the civil rights of the citizens, a fraud, Abdu and Tin, United States versus Throckmorton. You see the reference in the document you'll receive. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Hare. I'm a Henrietta resident. Whereas state and federal officials have met the efforts of New York Citizens Audit to seek redress for these egregious violations with indifference and inaction, including the Attorney General, Secretary of State, State Board of Elections, Inspector General, Federal Bureau of Investigations, state leadership of Democratic and Republican parties, county election officials, sheriffs, district attorneys, and others. Whereas none of these violations were addressed prior to the administration and certification of the 2022 general election, and there prevails a spirit of extreme contention and zero trust between people of differing political ideologies across New York, which is destructive to our families, our way of life, and the fabric of these United States.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, board members. My name's Larry Monty. I've lived on Fitzpatrick Trail for the last 20 years. Therefore, we call upon our representatives, including the town board members, county legislatures, state legislatures, federal legislatures, law enforcement, federal and state prosecutors, and judges to provide relief to the people and the assurance of domestic tranquility through the fulfillment of each of the following firm requests. Number 1, a complete end-to-end audit of the New York State 2022 general election for both paper and electronic records, including ballots, by a mutually agreed upon external third-party bonded auditing firm, possessed of adequate insurance and indemnification for the handling and protection of the personal identifying information of millions of New York State voters. In order to determine the true error rate, this audit will provide a comprehensive report and analysis of all lapses and errors with explanation of cause where it can be determined. Number 2, the enactment of legislation defining a mutually agreed upon process by which an end-to-end audit would be triggered in any future elections. Number 3, the enactment of legislation defining a mutually agreed upon accuracy rate for the New York State voter and county voter roll databases. Number 4, the enactment of legislation allowing for anonymous vote verification and tracking by the voter, open source, royalty-free, patent pending, including automatic mechanisms to report and remedy errors during the canvass period following an election, regardless of ballot entry source. Number 5, criminalize election misconduct explicitly with regard to state election law and increase penalties to reflect the societal and generational harms inflicted by these crimes. Thank you very much.
Supervisor and board members. My name is Rita O'Hare. I've been a resident of Henrietta since 1990. Last part of the resolution here says, be it resolved that the Town Board of Henrietta, New York stands in support with the concerns and remedies presented here. We implore the Monroe County Legislature, New York State Legislature, federal legislators, law enforcement, federal and state prosecutors, judges, and both state and county boards of elections to cooperate and fulfill these firm requests of the people. You will notice that there are a number of resources on the appendix of this resolution, including a long list of the laws that are applicable to an end-to-end audit. What we are asking all of you is necessary and more than reasonable considering the seriousness of the situation. It is actually the least that we can do to help preserve our sovereign state and nation. We hope and we pray that you each have the courage to add your name to this resolution, just as the 150 Henrietta residents whom you all represent have put their names to the petition submitted tonight. We're asking that, this be put on the agenda for the next meeting for you all to sign your names either one way or another on the resolution. And we thank you all for your time and your consideration of this matter.
Thank you. I don't want to get into a prolonged argument or in any type of debate. I'll just note a couple things, like in listening to the list of errors in the database, I'll tell you as a former programmer, most of those are software errors. That date, that's considered date 0. So if someone didn't properly enter a date and the software puts a 0 in that field, that's the date that's going to come up. The multiple records tied to different voters, again, depending on how good the database voter was or database programmer was, it's not uncommon that you get multiple records associated to a single thing. So, the thing I will just say is, in reviewing the data and reviewing other stuff, I've not seen any instances of actual votes being counted improperly. I can't speak to New York City. I don't pay any attention to what's going on in New York City. I won't say don't pay any attention, but not from a legislative standpoint. But in looking at all the local, and I don't mean just local elections, I mean elections that local ballot places for any of the elections. I've not seen any evidence of actual vote misfraud. Is there a problem with the voter registry database? Sure looks that way. Your data sure points that out. Okay. But in terms of saying that is greatly affected a bunch of these races in this area, I don't see it. I cannot find any evidence that it affected those races. In terms of, like I said, how it's recorded and reported after the fact in that database, that there appear to be some errors, there does. Like I said, most of that is, from what I've seen, is what I'll refer to as bad programming and or bad data entry. Could that be fixed? Absolutely. Whether I will just say there are a whole lot of other political ramifications that and stuff that are kind of buried in this. So I don't know that I, for one, am comfortable with signing on that particular resolution. But I speak for myself only and not for my fellow board members. So they'll have to make some decisions as to whether I don't know whether you'll find what I'll call a sponsor in a second to add this to the resolution, to the agenda, but we will see. Please keep it short because we've already spent a lot of time on this. Yep.
Well, I'm not sure what you did quite, extensively, Supervisor, to make that determination, but, the New York State database is the end result. That's the end result of what our voter history is on, and the votes attached in there, their final record from the state system are attached to many registration records that are clearly invalid because they do not meet the state's own requirements. So that's the proof is in the pudding from that perspective. And
to be clear, it's put in the database after the fact, but that's not in terms of what the count and the vote at that particular time. And so again, for instance, if one voter has two records in the database and they update that voter and it flags them both, you don't see the vote count on that night go up. That's not what happens. So in terms of when you look at that database, in terms of the number of people who have voted, one of the things that happens every year, we get the list of all the people who have voted, what elections they voted in. Are there errors in that? Probably. I also know that, when, and all of us have experienced this, right? When we go out, you knock on a door, you expect a voter there. Well, they've since moved, and of course, they've not updated their database record. Or maybe it was a kid that's gone off to college, or someone has passed away. But, again, that doesn't affect the actual vote totals. I will say, with that said, whereas there's always a handful of those, it is a small handful. When we go out and we get those voter registration rolls, I don't knock on a door and find, there's 3 people there. In other words, if it's an error, it's someone, he passed away last year, or they went off to college, or they moved out of the house, because a lot of times it's a child. I don't find records, and I don't know if anyone else can speak to this, but I don't find where I get to a house and the house doesn't exist, or the people don't exist, or anything like that. So, anyway.
Well, I mean, we're not contending that there aren't parts of the system that do work and that are valid. We're not contending that. And I know you seem to be very, very up and extensive on following the elections and very informative about that. That's great. But even at a massive one-person scale, it's a bit of a spot check really to the whole system. The fact of the matter is the New York State voter database is the final record of the vote of the state for the entire state, including us. So looking at that end result, we see many of those 740,000 records out of 8.5 million in the 2020 election were from these clearly invalid records. So that's just the data. That's just the facts.
Right.
We don't know. We're not saying we know how they all happen, but it doesn't really matter that we need to know, because the final result is either those votes were introduced and could have impacted elections, or the system is so far off and wrong that it's somehow putting in bad data when the actual real results were okay. And that is, and I did software testing for many years myself. That is usually not the mark of a software bug. A massive amount of data that's valid data, good data, just incorrect data and illegal data, and data showing not what the election law should support. That to assume that is data error or programming error is not a very strong.
I think you're missing
statistical
the point.
statement.
I think you're missing the point. The bad programming doesn't mean that it generated the error. So, for instance, if you enter a record and it comes up that the birth date is 1700, for instance, that should flag and immediately flag an error and say, don't put this data in. That's what I'm referring to. Good
Yeah.
programming catches those data errors and data entry errors and does a search for multiple records and does a whole bunch of that stuff. So I'm not saying that the errors were caused by programming bugs. I'm saying it's sloppy programming that didn't catch them, that allowed them to get entered and not caught. That's my contention.
More than that, it's sloppy oversight of the
Wow,
entire New York
sure.
State election system to
Okay.
not catch what we caught as citizens just working part-time on our own. They should have caught all these
Okay.
massive problems on their own. And
Sure.
that's just a problem right there that demands investigation, because any, even bad data, they can say, oh, just put a placeholder in, whatever. The point is that's a final record of where the data is, and it should be fixed, and it should be investigated why it's gotten out of hand so bad. So hopefully you can think about this and maybe consider what the people are basically saying in Henrietta, just from my own spot check, my own sample, or our own sample of going door to door. People are concerned. They want action. Anything we can do, simple step, just standing firm, writing our signature down. We want the state to check out and investigate and clean up these errors and let us know why they're the way they are. That's the simple request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other public comments?
I
Well-
do, oh.
Go
I
ahead.
have, virtually, I have Glenn Weinberg here to give an update on the CCA RFP when the town board is ready.
Sure. Go ahead, Glenn. Glenn, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, good. Thanks, thanks for allowing me to come and give the update. So we have been taking in some pricing from the 3 qualified bidders that have bid on this RFP. The sort of newest wrinkle from yesterday was that one of these suppliers has bid in such a manner that meets the state mandated pricing benchmark for conventional or standard supply, that is a non-renewable product to be compared directly to the utility, the RG&E variable monthly rate, but is instead a fixed rate. And the rule is that rate must come in below the trailing 12-month average for the RG&E variable rate. That had been a challenge for us to be able to meet that benchmark in previous pricing rounds. And as of yesterday, we have one bidder now that has met that. They have met that, however, with a condition that that conventional product not be selected as the default. So that what that means is that the municipality may offer it to residents, and any resident that wants to take advantage of it may do so, but the municipality may not select the conventional rate as the default for residents that do not take any other action. That had previously been the town's indication for the product that they would like to select as the default. So Supervisor Schultz suggested that we discuss it here with the town, with the town board and publicly tonight to review that. The city of Rochester and the city of Canandaigua did in fact move forward with that pricing structure yesterday in that bidder, and have contracted with that construct, choosing a renewable product as the default. So the change that would have to be made for the town to take advantage of that same pricing that Rochester and Canandaigua have is to essentially modify their indication or their preference for the default product from a conventional to one of the renewable products. We're recommending the 50% or blended renewable product, which is in fact a step up in price from the conventional offering, also a step up, of course, in terms of renewable content. So that's the sort of trade-off there. But that is what is required as a condition of the bid in order for them to offer that low price for conventional, in which they're essentially taking a loss on it. They have to have assurance from the town that it will not be selected as the default. So that is the wrinkle that we wanted to discuss here this evening. I don't know, maybe I'll just stop there to see if there are questions just about the mechanics of how that works. And then otherwise I can maybe sort of dig into a couple other details.
Yeah, so just to add on, I took that the charge you guys gave me was that I could approve, if you remember, the pricing comes in the morning and we have to approve by end of business day. So there's really no way to do it through town board approval. So we had kind of set parameters, and one of the things we had said was that we would use the conventional that was equal to or below the 12-month rolling average. That would be our default, and we would have the options for the other two. So when he came to me with this, I said, I can't sign this because it's not the charge I had from the board. So I don't know whether the board is interested in changing that charge that would allow me to approve one like that. I will say, when I looked at the data, so was it Rochester who's just finishing up was it 12 or 24 month cycle?
Yeah, exactly. So the city of Rochester, so they just signed yesterday for their second contract, which will start in September, but they're currently in a 24-month contract that will finish at the end of August. They at the time that they signed that contract, it was a very similar value proposition, whereas the renewable product was about a penny above, a little bit more than a penny, in fact, above where the 12-month utility average was. However, our recommendation at that time was to lock it in for 24 months because we expected utility prices to go up over that 24-month period. And of course they did. That contract has now saved the city of Rochester more than $2.5 million. We expect it'll save about $3 million when it's finished, with an average of about $75 to $100 per household over the course of that contract. And that's a renewable. So they've had a fixed rate, a stable rate for renewable electricity as their default, and have still saved in aggregate several $1 million doing so. It's a very similar recommendation that we're making here. We're seeing that same inflationary environment and that same upwards pressure on price going forward into 24 and into 25. The city of Rochester signed a contract yesterday for 27 months. So actually a little bit longer, 2+ years, to take advantage of that price environment, which figures to be considerably higher than it is now in 2025. So that's the same recommendation we're making here tonight to the town, a 27-month term with a 50% renewable, New York State renewable default. We'll see. What we're going to do is we're going to refresh pricing tomorrow morning. As the supervisor said, all electricity transactions have to be done intraday. They don't hold it overnight because markets can move. So we'll get refreshed pricing tomorrow morning. I'll come back to the supervisor with what that refreshed pricing is. We may get it from more than one bidder tomorrow. So we may have competition there, but we'll see where we are. That's why I want to be careful to sort of isolate a single bidder or a single price, because there is some variability there. So we'll see what the situation is, and if it presents similar value as it did yesterday for Rochester and Canandaigua, we'll make that same recommendation to move forward. So what we would need tonight is the board to authorize the supervisor to act should those conditions be met when we get refreshed pricing, whether it be tomorrow or subsequently. We'll run that refreshed pricing daily through June 2nd. So if it's not tomorrow, it might be Friday or Tuesday or so. Yeah.
Okay, just a couple notes. So that 24-month, that saved about 75 to 100 per household. That was the, in the, I don't know if it was the 50% or 100% renewable, but in other words, the renewable price over that time saved money compared to the conventional. Now,
Exactly.
the risk you run right now is if the 24-month rolling average stays where it is, you're looking at that the current blended rate is about $75 to $100 more per household per year. If as it currently stands, than the rolling conventional. Now, again, if it continues its upward trend, so in theory, by the end of the first year, they probably won't have saved anything over the conventional, because it starts out higher and the conventional will meet it. And then in theory, they get the savings in the second half. With that said, you know, we can do a very aggressive blitz out to get information out to residents for anybody who is concerned about the price. So there's a number of people who like the idea of the blended and, you know, help the environment while essentially, again, either hopefully more than breaking even, they'll actually save money over that 27-month period. But, you know, one of the things I also talked about is, and would Jewel be willing to be at a number of senior center events where they handhold the seniors through the process of opting into the conventional if they can't afford, because whereas, you know, a lot of, I'll just say more online savvy individuals would have no problem opting into the conventional. If that's what they desire, that would be a problem for seniors. So they did commit to doing that. We could also do a program right at the library, the same thing for anybody who wanted to come in and do it. It's not a difficult process. It's actually pretty easy, but again, there are some people who get befuddled when they look at online stuff. So we would have folks from Jewel there, and all they would have to do is bring in a copy of their electric bill, and they could get them to sign up. So, you know, like I said, it's as of my charge right now, we can't do this. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are if we want to go for something like this. Otherwise, we wait and hope the rates come in low enough, and if not, then we wouldn't be able to participate in the CCA.
Personally, I'm okay with changing the charge. I believe that, you know, you would keep the needs of our residents in the forefront. I would just ask that as you have in the past, maybe check in with the board members once you've received the rates, just to verify. But I understand that we couldn't possibly get together
Right, and make a decision.
and
Yeah.
make a decision as a group, but if we adapted the charge and you contacted the board members prior to making the final decision, I would feel comfortable with that.
Others?
No.
No, we can't make we can't make a decision. No, in terms of, again, this is just I'm acting on behalf of the board. We kind of already approved that we're going to do the CCA. The question is which one are we going to opt into? That's essentially a charge you guys have given me, because there's no way, like I said, we
get the terms.
Well, they don't even come in the morning. Let's be honest, right, Glenn? Usually they tend to come in closer to lunchtime.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then you have a couple hours to essentially make a decision and sign up. So there really is no way to do it as a town board, which is why you guys have given me parameters by which.
I understand that.
Yeah, so the question is, if we stick to the current parameters, this does not meet it, because they have that caveat that we cannot sign up for the below market value for conventional, we can't sign up for that as our default, which is what our intention was after the last meeting. If we want to stick with that, we can. Like I said, the risk we run is that we don't get one that meets that. The other we can do is, again, we can modify the charge that says I can sign up for the lower of the rate. So that would be the blended with, and that we would then follow up with an aggressive program to get anyone who needs the additional savings or wants the additional savings to easily get them signed up into the conventional non-default. Is it preferable to me? It's not. I'd rather go into default, but if we don't have that option, we can't take that option. None of us know what the future holds from the market, right? If tomorrow Putin were to withdraw all troops from the Ukraine and stand down, could you potentially see a drop in the market? I'm sure you would. Is that likely to happen? Not based on Putin's many years of activity. And, you know, if you look at the historical market, it fluctuates, but it steadily increases. So the ability to hold, you know, and that was one of the reasons they went for the 27-month is the 20, and that's what, had they offered it to be the default, I would have signed up for the 27 months, because the 15-month prices and the 27-month prices were the same. And let's face it, 15 months from now, the prices are not going to be cheaper.
Right.
So it made sense if we could, we'd go for the 27-month. But I just don't know how comfortable people feel with the, you know, I'd be blunt, I'm torn, because I really wanted the default to be the low end, and then anyone who wanted to opt into the blended or 100% could do so. But it's sounding like that nobody's coming back with that as an option currently.
Well, and it does sound like that the 50% renewable, while slightly higher right now, in a year or two, it will likely be at around the same rate as,
The same or lower,
yeah,
Yeah.
as the standard
at least based off of past
trends. current trends.
performance.
Mhm,
And as they say, past performance is no guarantee for future, but
right.
so what do you guys think? Keep the charge, change the charge? What do you think? I know it's tough.
I'm in the same situation you're in. So the difference then is that if individual residents, in this case, don't come in and change to conventional, then they're automatically going to be signed up for the 50% blended. Because I don't think you'd ever go full.
Correct.
No,
I wouldn't go
right.
full,
Yeah.
not for the price. Now, again, anyone who wants to do full can opt into it.
Right.
But, you know, the original goal was to have that you would opt into any of the ecological, you know, the renewable ones.
Well, $70 to $100 a year for people in retirement living on Social Security is significant. I have a question. Well, I think I answered the question. Once we do this, it's locked. How long do they? So
At any time.
at any time they can come back and go
Correct.
conventional.
Yeah, so if they get their first bill and say, why is it more expensive? We say, well, here's how we can save you money, switch to conventional.
By
So
bringing in their bill and filling out some papers. Or whatever
they
the
just have to
process
bring in
is.
the bill, yeah. We'd make it as painless as possible. You know, again, it's not what I would prefer, but if, you know, it may be our only option at this point. I don't know.
And then vice versa, if we stuck with the conventional or it did nothing. So could they, after a couple months, come in and say, well, I'd like to sign up for the 50%?
They could.
They can go both ways.
Correct.
Okay.
I imagine there is some practical limit on how often you can change, but I don't know if there's an actual hard limit. That might be once a month. I don't know, but
Well, that was basically my question. Can
Yeah.
you make one decision in the last 27 months? The answer is no, you could change it.
right,
anytime.
we have to make a decision that lasts 27 months.
Right.
So in other
Yeah.
words, that'll be
If-
our supplier,
Right.
but any resident can opt in at any time. you can change who your ESCO is. And they don't even have to go for our three options. They can use an
They could go for our.
energy supply company that is outside. They could go back to the RG&E rolling average. It's not rolling average, but the fluctuating number. So, you know, and again, anybody who has already made an ESCO selection, they are automatically opted out of this. This is only for people who have never made an ESCO selection.
So is RG&E, for example, are they using a blended method now, or are they strictly conventional?
They're strictly conventional.
They're not using any renewable energy.
I won't say not any, because hydroelectric plays a part.
Because I thought the solar arrays were pumped into the RG&E system.
No, so again, you got to separate the supply from the
Right.
transmission. So they are come into the RG&E transmission system. So anybody who is using solar, but when RG&E is buying power,
They're not
through
buying.
the ESCO, I'm not aware of much that they're doing from a solar.
Okay.
But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they are buying. If I remember the correct number, it was in the, what was it, 10 to 20% is renewable due to things like hydroelectric. Is that, Glenn, do you know what the number is for conventional typically?
Yeah, in RG&E, the latest published numbers, it's about 60% fossil. It's about 30% nuclear, and then about 10% hydro. Yeah, there's very little, there actually is very little wholesale, if any, in RG&E territory, wholesale solar right now. There's a lot of what's called distributed solar, including rooftop solar and community solar. But in terms of wholesale resources, which is what we're talking about here, there's very little. It's like you said, mostly hydro and some wind.
Okay. Do we have to make a decision tonight?
Well, if we don't, then we basically, it's the current charge. And if we can't find someone who's willing to sell the blended default below the charge, then we'll go 2 weeks without being able to sign up. I don't know.
Okay.
When does the bid process stop?
It closes at June 2nd. We do have we can extend it a little bit. We do have some flex there. Sorry if you're hearing my dog bark in the backyard. But we're gonna run it every day, barring weekends and Memorial Day, until June 2nd. We're very, I mean, we were there yesterday. If we're not there, it's gonna be extremely close. I'm feeling quite confident that sometime in the window we'll get there. We just won't get there without accepting this caveat. You know, the market is too far away to get there the quote unquote old fashioned way where you can select any default that you want. Right now, we're really only seeing bids in which this condition is placed on us, to get in compliance. In other words, this condition is necessary from the supplier's view.
To put it in marketing terms, it's a loss leader.
It is, and you know, it's you know, it's a math equation for them. You know, they have an estimation of what they think they'll be able to, you know, to earn on the rest of it, and how many people roughly will likely take us up on. Now, again, you know, what the contract will say is you cannot select it as default. What it won't say is you can't do what Supervisor Schultz was saying, was talking about earlier, which is to have a communications campaign throughout the community to let people know that this option is available to them. It's not the one they've been defaulted into, maybe, but it is available to them at any time. They can come in and out at any time. They can switch amongst offerings at any time. Like you said, Supervisor, a minimum of monthly. You can only make one decision each billing cycle, but if you wanted to, you could jump around every month in and out of the program and between products. So all of those options are still available to them. It's just a matter of which the condition only impacts the town's ability to select the default product for those that do not take affirmative action.
So hearing that, you know, it's not the one we wanted, but it's going to depend on us then to educate our community to make sure that they know the options. I have no problem with changing the default as long as we let everybody know and continue through your newsletter and through other things that they have the option to go back wherever they want to,
Yeah,
up
so,
or down.
right, so one of the things I will note is there will be a newsletter coming out. Well, going to the press end of this month, early next month, so that would be perfect timing, and then we could again run another full page explanation in the September newsletter, so.
Yeah,
there
we
will
could
be at
even
least
make a
3.
video and put it online so they could access it and, okay. You all right with that?
Yep. Lisa?
I agree with them.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I will adjust the charge and we'll see what the numbers come in and hopefully they come in better than what Rochester got.
Do we need to vote on it?
I don't know that we ever did that as a formal charge. Do you remember, Becky? Or formal vote?
The resolution that we did last time at the special meeting I gave to Craig in case we needed to modify it, where we selected the default and set the
Okay,
maximum rate.
I will read it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I figure that'll serve as a base to modify as needed.
Can't we amend the resolution?
Yeah, that's what we're going to. I'm just,
Craig's so organized.
Yeah, well, Becky, I think.
no, I'm working on it right now. Select conventional.
I don't understand.
If possible. Otherwise. Selects. The lowest. I'm just gonna call it the blended, selects the blended. Rate as default. With education or selecting the conventional. Okay. So what's the number? It's now 214.
You got it.
Okay. So basically, just so everyone knows, it's the same resolution, except I'm inserting the following. So that therefore be it resolved that the town of Henrietta selects the conventional electric supply product as a default selection, if possible. So this is what I'm adding, if possible. Otherwise, selects the blended rate as default with education for selecting community education on how to select the conventional product.
Or the product of their choice.
Right. Well, right. I mean, that's always going to be default, but I just,
Yep.
And then it's still got to be it further resolved that we won't do it unless the final pricing for, and I'm going to switch this from conventional to, or default to conventional. Electric supply product is at or under the 7.49 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, so that's what I'm going to put forth. Does everyone understand that? Or is there any other modification we think we need? Okay. Fellow board members, I have resolution 12-214, 2023 to authorize the supervisor to amend the signed memorandum of understanding selecting electric supply product for community choice aggregation.
Second.
Any further discussion?
An amended resolution that already went out.
So we passed this one last week. I'm just amending it.
Just amending.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I'll check with Don to get that answer.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions, comments, discussion?
I do have a hand raised. Kevin had his hand raised prior to Glenn speaking, but I I guess I better double check to make sure that Kevin doesn't have anything about this specifically.
Kevin, is it about this? If not, I'll come back to you after we're done with it.
You do with this.
I didn't catch that.
No, it has nothing to do with this.
Okay, we'll come back to you after we're done with this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other comment? Does that sound good to you, Glenn? What I read is the changes?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Okay, so I will also, unfortunately, Don had already left, so I will run this by the town attorney to make sure that's good to go. If not, we may have to call a emergency meeting just to repass it, so. Okay, Kevin, you had an additional public comment.
Yes, I promise you I'll be brief, given how late it is. I was gonna be brief anyway. I'd like to suggest the divided driveway into the town hall and new town court complex be named Jacob Stevens Drive after the town's first supervisor, that the driveway leading from the back of the town hall and new town court parking lot for the DPW parking lot out to Calkins Road and Highland Drive be named Chuck Marshall Drive, that the new driveway behind them, from the playground parking lot to the cabin parking lot be named either softball-football driver, football-softball drive, and the new vehicular bridge between Cabin Drive and the senior center parking lot be named Mulligan Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you for your recommendations. I will say I like some of them better than others.
Okay.
Talk about his father.
What's that? Oh, it's not the,
Bill's.
oh, okay, okay. Any others? Do we have any committee or miscellaneous reports from the board?
Library, Henrietta Public Library will be closed Saturday, May 27th and Monday, May 29th. They're normally closed on Sunday, so that'll be a 3-day weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, they'll be closed. Also, I want to thank the library and all the volunteers for the bike rodeo that they had. It was an amazing event. There was a lot of people, looked like they were having a lot of fun. And it was just a really great event. This is not our library, but it's a library. So I think this was kind of cool when I was reading through the thing that we get on the library. Anybody that's into vintage books, the Webster Public Library on Saturday, June 3rd from 10 to 1 is selling vintage books. So I know there are people out there. My daughter-in-law is a huge vintage book person, but I thought that was kind of cool when I read that. And it says starting price is $10. So I'm not sure how vintage for $10, but I thought that was really kind of interesting. Very cool.
Sometimes they are very vintage, but they're people who want to get stuff out of their house.
Yeah, I understand that.
There's certain types of vintage books, I think, that are more collectible than others.
Right.
Certain
Yes.
titles.
I'd like to give a shout out to our town of Henrietta team. That Memorial Day parade was just the thing you did.
Yes, it was
Um,
so well organized.
The only thing that I would ask is that in the past, the school board used to walk. I don't know if, I hope an invitation was extended, but that is the only thing that I thought was missing from past parades, but
You're right. We have seen them walk because I remember Diane McBride walked last year.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Pam is still on. If she knows that answer as to whether the invite went out to the school board, but we'll make sure that it definitely goes out in the future. If it's possible it didn't, they just didn't, for whatever reason, didn't show. Didn't.
the amount of work that, go ahead.
Hi, I am here. Yeah, we had a last minute cancellation from a couple of them that were originally planning on coming. So I don't know if they had a conflict or what, but yes, they were invited.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Pam. Yeah.
You're welcome.
There's so much work that goes.
Yeah, it was
into that.
Pam, you and your team did a fabulous job. It was so well organized and moved along beautifully, and we ran out of candy at the end. I was hoarding candy from wherever I could get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Sorry,
we're so
Becky.
happy.
There with the boys and I ran out of. Oh, my.
We
God.
might want to have a candy resupply station as we turn the corner.
We were so happy with the turnout. Obviously the weather, but the groups, especially if you saw the group from RHAA that were just a huge turnout. So
They were having a great time. And
yeah,
the marching bands were fabulous. And I know it's been all over Henrietta Highlight. Why does Rush Henrietta not have a marching band? And we just don't.
We have a great music program.
I was gonna say, we
Something
have
said
so
to
many
me-
fabulous music programs. I don't know how the kids could do everything they do anyway. No.
What I got a kick out of is somebody said something about, yeah, some of the bands are pretty expensive, especially Rush Henrietta's. I'm like, well, I guess you could argue it was infinite cost because
Yeah.
there's nobody in the band. Because I was
Yeah.
talking about the per performer rates as I was going through and signing the stuff, and I thought that was kind of funny.
It's Halloween in May.
Yeah.
For the kids.
I will also note that there was a very much appreciated and well done Special Olympics
Yeah.
event program. So the folks weren't able to attend the one the meet elsewhere, so they held a meet here for the local participants. Lots of rave reviews from the families of the gymnasts who participated, as well as from the individual who has been spearheading Special Olympics programs in this community for quite some time. So really well done. Huge shout out to Jackie Kiddo and that entire team in the rec that does those.
More evidence of a town for all.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mhm.
And then I will note that we just had the official ribbon cutting this morning for the surgery center at the URMC. It's been open for a while, but today was the official ribbon cutting. And they expect the tower to be completed in October, as well as the rehab area, which is in between the mall. It was kind of interesting because as we went through the tour, you had to go outside and around and come back in. So there's a portion that's attached to the mall that's further along, and the portion attached to Sears is further along. In between is under construction, and it's a hard hat area. So we had to go around it, but I will tell you, if you get a chance to go over and visit it, do so. It is gorgeous. It is so inviting, well laid out, and very excited to see that tower come up in. So, and I will also note that one of the things Wilmerite said, there are 7 new stores applying to be in the mall. Some are either already in, or that's 7 total, either already in or on the way. Juan and Maria's Empanada Stop has said they've seen tremendous business.
That is a great
The
ad.
Coffee Connection said that their business has doubled and tripled since the opening of the URMC. So
Fantastic.
it's
I-
exactly why we created the the mixed use overlay district, and glad to see it's starting to restore hopefully restore some of the value and use of that mall.
Yeah.
I talked to a lady the other day who does Thai food, and she's out at, I can't remember the name of the brewery, but it's out by Wizard of Clay, right next door to Wizard of Clay. And she does Thai food on Friday and Saturday nights there, and she's gonna hopefully be going in there as well. Her food is fabulous.
Great.
It's so good. So I'm hoping that she gets in there, but I talked to her when I was out at that brewery a couple weeks ago, so.
And there was also a ribbon cutting for the reopening of Island Wraps out in the Riverton Plaza. If you don't remember, she for many years did food trucks and still does, and this is her first brick and mortar. She stumbled a little bit out of the gate, reorganized, she's got the new menu up, and so today was her quote unquote ribbon cutting official reopening. So, anything else? And hearing nothing further, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Seconded.